Time is now 6:30. We'll begin open public comment. Gives the public the opportunity to speak on any item that's not on the agenda for up to 5 minutes. If you do wish to speak, please come and sign in the front. I will call on you. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. And again, this will be until 7 o'clock. There's also comment cards in the back. Tyler. Good. Yeah, I know. I was gone for a while. It was good. Santa was good to the kids this year, so I probably broke down like 20 boxes. Yep. Yeah. Luckily, I didn't have to put much together this year. The girls got this little race car, this American Girl race car. They went outside and had a good time with it.
other than the lack of information. And of that, I mean, the information that the public inputs at this level, as well as at other meetings, there's no feedback from it. There are comments made during these public open forums, though they may be sporadic. There are times where they need to have some feedback on. And that lack of information is lacking transparency. In other words, if somebody has an issue of concern or would like something brought up on a next agenda, nothing is publicly being brought forward. Instance is on the BID, when asked about some of the checks and balances, where the expenditures went, we know the income, it's a set income. Their income taxing during the business district is very evident, but where do those expenditures go? That has been asked for at the last 2 meetings. Nothing's been brought forth in that respect. In regards to public comments, some of this is just asking about information that should be available online. You have multiple meetings, boards, committees, etc. Whether it's the Parks Board, the BID, the Civil Service, even the Ridge Cemetery, even the Planning Commission, there's a lot of minutes that are missing. And when you abide by the Opens Meeting Act, I believe there's a time frame, and legal can definitely correct me, as I'm sure he will, that you have to have those minutes published and available. Not that they're necessarily approved. They could be in draft form. But when you have a collective body making decisions for the city and pushing them forward to you, the governing body, those minutes should be available. That information isn't coming back to you any more than it's coming back to the public. There's a lot of information that gets discussed at these meetings, the library board being one of them, and another, your planning commission. Those minutes should be available. The Civil Service Commission, they go in executive session. That obviously is not for disclosure any more than if you go in executive session. But what transpires prior to that should be available in printed format. Your minutes are not being added to the website. They're not all audio recorded or video recorded like this city council meeting is. So that isn't available to you any more than it is to the public. In times past, department heads were required to attend meetings and give at least somewhat of a summary of what activity or what has transpired business-wise, city-wise, or utility-wise to you, the governing body, and also to the public. But that doesn't happen anymore. When is the last time you've had anything from any of the committees and boards that serve as a sounding board prior to decisions being made by you as a collective body? It hasn't been happening. That's changed and evolved over the last 4 or 5 years. Prior to 4 or 5 years ago, that was being done. There were weekly meetings, monthly meetings. These boards meet, they make decisions, they want to push something forward, and that information gets brought to you. But that's also in the form of minutes, and that information is collected. So I guess part of that transparency that has been pushed and talked about, and it's a great catch term, but it has to be acted upon. Your parks and boards meet monthly. Your planning commission meets monthly unless there's no information like there was this last meeting. Your Ridge Board, your business improvement district, where are all those minutes collected at? Look on your website. There's a lot of information that's missing. And I don't know whose position is responsible for that, but somebody has to be collecting that information. That input should be given after those meetings are over. Whether or not they have a meeting monthly or quarterly, that information should be availed, even if in a draft form. Because again, when you follow Opens Meeting Act, that information has to be available in draft form minimum and available to the public in a timely fashion. Thank you.
is, yeah. I don't mind it. I don't think members of the public either, but I don't know if he would mind waiting. You go ask him. Okay. Yeah. I got those today. All good. Wasn't expecting anybody to really be here, but that was because of the holiday. Perfect. This time we'll have roll call.
Please cast your vote for roll call. 8 council members are present, Mayor.
Item 1, Resolution 2021-196, levying a special tax and assessment in the amount of $2,629.22 against Dorsey's. This is 213 South Nye Avenue to pay the costs of weed and debris removal and assessment. Staff report.
Mayor and council, my staff report for these 2 items are the same, but in different amounts. The first one is $2,629.22 for cleanup. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding this assessment.
Any questions for staff? Councilman Ellis?
Tyler, that's the largest I've ever seen. Was this
Yeah.
extremely bad?
I don't know the specifics of this property. I did look at the property, just, looking at Google Maps to see, and it looked like there may have been a garden on that property in the rear potentially. And so maybe there was a substantial cleanup due to that.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Legband,
I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-196.
Councilman Yerger,
Second its motion.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 2, Resolution 2021-197, levying a special tax and assessment in the amount of $979.64 against Northside. This is 2148 North Union to pay costs of weed and debris removal and assessment. Are there any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Gibson,
I will make that motion.
there a second? Councilwoman Ganem,
Second the motion.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen,
Make a motion to adjourn the Board of Equalization.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes to adjourn.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. I'll now open up the city council regular meeting. Time is 7:03. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. Please cast your vote for roll call.
Eight council members are present, Mayor.
Thank you, Tyler. Next is mayor's comments. Have a few things tonight. First, I'd like to recognize the service awards for December. We have 4 of them. Mike Sabadka, 20 years of service. Mike was hired in 2001 as a maintenance worker 1 for the Parks and Recreation Department. 2002, he became a maintenance worker 2. Then again in 2005, he became a maintenance worker 3. Tyler Thomas, 15 years of service. Tyler was hired in 2006 as a firefighter EMT for the Fremont Fire Department. Then in 2013, he became a firefighter EMT paramedic. Thomas Vaca, 20 years of service. In 2001, Thomas was hired as a wastewater treatment plant mechanic 1. In 2004, Thomas was promoted to a wastewater plant mechanic 2. And then the 4th is Kevin Schallberg, 5 years of service. Kevin was hired in 2016 as a utility maintenance worker for the Department of Utilities. And in 2020, Kevin was promoted to a water and sewer service worker. So appreciate 20 years of service, 15, 20, and 5. Thank you to these 4 individuals for their service to the city of Fremont. Okay, moving on, I have a couple other things in regards to my comments. I'd like to first recognize our city administrator, Brian Newton. He's retiring with his last day being January 3. I want to thank Mr. Newton for his service, dedication, and commitment to the city of Fremont over the last 6.5 years, over 40 years of public service. I, along with everyone in the city, wish him all the best moving forward. Thank you, Brian. On the agenda tonight are my appointments of the interim utility general manager and interim city administrator. I know we'll get to them, but I want to thank Troy Shaban and Jody Sanders for their willingness to step into these roles. I can tell you, I've had meetings all day today, and throughout the last couple weeks. And I, again, am excited about their willingness to step up as we continue to look to the future for these two roles. I know that, we have a lot still to accomplish within the city, and these interim positions are extremely important as we kind of bridge the gap. And so, again, as mayor, it's my mission that our city continues to work together to grow Fremont together by serving our public well. And that continues in this interim period with these two positions. So again, I want to thank both of those individuals. And then again, they're on the agenda tonight and for their willingness to step up into these roles. Also make note that the jobs for both of these have been posted. We are in the process of collecting applications. And so again, I'll continue to keep city council informed as we move forward on that. That concludes my comments. Moving on would be item 1 is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the December 28th, 2021 regular meeting. Councilman Vaughn.
So moved.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
We have, is there any other, Councilman Yerger?
To adopt the current agenda.
Yes,
Well, you haven't asked
there was,
items to remove for discussion? Or you
To
have-
adopt the agenda, not the consent agenda, to adopt the current agenda.
Oh, sorry,
this is to adopt the
my
agenda.
bad.
Okay, all right.
Apologize.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Cast your vote.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council, staff, or the public? Tyler?
Mayor, it was brought to my attention that on item number 13, it does not have a resolution number and it's not included in the packet. So that resolution would need to be 2021-204.
I would like to remove items 9 and 10. Councilman Yerger.
I'd like an opportunity to address items 5 and 12, please.
Any other items from city council? Go ahead.
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. I'd like items 4 and 11 removed. Thank you.
There's no other items. I'd take a motion to approve consent agenda items 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Councilman Yerger.
I'll make a motion to approve the items as listed by the mayor.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
4 was taken off.
4 off.
2, 3, 6, 7, and 8 is what I have. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, moving on to item 4, resolution 2021-198, authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with BLT Plumbing and Heating for a dissolved air flotation heating system replacement. We'll have staff report.
Troy Shaban, Assistant City Administrator Utilities. This is to replace the heating system at the DAF building at the wastewater treatment plant. It's been there since 1998. It's outlived its life. I believe the staff report says we have budgeted 63,594. We actually have budgeted 60,000. These heating systems out there are subject to the sulfur gases, and they deteriorate pretty quickly. So getting 22 years out of that one was pretty good. I hope we can get 22 out of the next. I can't answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Councilman Yerger?
I don't have technical questions for staff. Actually, I'm just going to ask whether or not you would be in agreement to modifying the resolution language to include a whereas statement with regards to BLT plumbing and heating submitting the lowest bid. That's your rationale
Sure.
for accepting it. Typically, we disclose that, so it's a matter of public record. So I'd like to add that whereas statement and
Lowest responsible bid.
lowest responsible bid, perfect language. The other thing that I would like to change in the resolution is to authorize in the now be it therefore resolved statement to approve the mayor signing executing the contract in light of the change that we're going through currently, and he signs contracts all the time. I'd make those two change recommendations as an amendment to this resolution.
Any comments from the public? Okay. Any other comments from council before I entertain that motion to amend? Councilman Legband?
Just wanted to make sure legal is okay with those changes.
Yep, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Legal, is that 2 amendments or 1? With the whereas and the,
You can handle them
Signer.
both in one.
that's the motion to amend. Is there a second? Councilman Gibson?
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll make a motion to approve amended resolution 2021-198.
Councilman Yerger,
Second, the amended resolution.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 5, a resolution 2021-199 to allow for the billing of fire services of the Fremont Fire Department and adoption of the fee schedule. We'll have staff report from Chief Burnt.
Todd Burnt, Fire Chief. This is an annual thing that we have to do according to state statute to authorize us to fire bill insurance companies for structure fires, motor vehicle accidents, vehicle fires, and such hazmat incidents like that.
Any questions for Chief? Councilman Legband?
How do your fees compare to other fire stations our size in the other towns? And how do we compare?
Well, we're the only one that really bills for structure fires, vehicle fires. A lot of departments just bill for motor vehicle accidents. And it's trying to figure out how to say this because we're sort of unique to what other departments are doing because we do things a little bit different. We're probably right in the ballpark, but a lot of departments just do things a little different than we do it.
As long as you're okay with it.
Oh, yeah. And in this rates, we just increased them this last year with the master fee. So that is reflective in the resolution there.
Councilman Yerger?
So to follow up on Councilman Legband's questions, I'm going to start, I guess, with your last statement. So we've already adopted these fees in the master fee schedule.
Yes.
And so our purpose of adopting these again tonight, it's different is what?
Well, every year we have to have a resolution signed, approved by the governing board. So when we start billing, insurance companies at any time can request, okay, we want your authorization to fire bill. And if we don't have anything on the books, they don't have to pay. So we have to do this every year. So if an insurance company comes back and says, well, I want to see your resolution, your authorization to bill, we can present it and and they'll be able to pay.
Okay, so this is more along the lines of the authorization to bill, not the establishment of the fees.
No,
which we
no,
already-
no,
which we
no.
Already did.
Yeah.
And I may have asked these questions before when we did set the fee schedule, but I'm going to ask you anyway, just to make sure I have a good thing in mind with regards to the fees. So when it comes to the cost that we now have in the fee schedule, do you recall on these, what percentage of our cost the city is recovering? I know it's not full cost because you're saying we're never really going to get there. Any idea? I mean,
No,
is it-
no
is it-
idea.
Is it even, it's less than half, I'm sure,
Oh, it's probably maybe a fourth,
25% maybe?
maybe.
Okay, and I'm not trying to pin you down. And one of the goals in setting those fee schedules, when we talked about this last, I think was a movement towards, we are recovering our cost, even though we know we won't get there. But if we were at 20% before, the new fee schedule might have got us to 25, maybe we'll get someplace else in the future. Our plan is that we keep escalating this up to recover cost.
Yes, and majority of our billing is for motor vehicle accidents. So when we bill, mostly motor vehicle accidents, where maybe they're 15, 30 minutes. So I think in the bill it has like 600 and some bucks an hour for an engine. So, and as we increase these rates, we're actually going to be collecting more because of these motor vehicle accidents. Structure fires, you know, if we're at a structure fire for 3-4 hours, you know, we may have a bill $5,000-$6,000, but insurance may only have $1,000 or $1,500 in there. And that's all we collect. But at these motor vehicle crashes, and as we bill those, we'll be able to collect more from them as we move forward.
So the resolution is basically just giving you the underlying council authority to do the billing, which helps us if we have legal challenge from the insurance carriers or whatever for what we're charging and the like. We've authorized all of this.
Correct.
Okay. My last question is for Jody. And I think we talked about this during the budget. I just wanted to be clear on this as well. In the resolution, it says that the fundings being collected go into the general fund. And we had discussion during the time of the budget, whether or not the funds that go into the general fund are in any way earmarked or into the fire department bucket, if you will, rather than just general spending. And could you refresh me on the answer to that?
The answer is yes, it does go to where the fire department's activities are recorded. The department code is 1206 for fire. And so you'd look for, in the revenue section, you would find the account number 001-1206. And I think for fire billing, it's 342-0300. That's going to get you in the neighborhood at
Okay.
least.
Thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions for Chief Burnt? Thank you. Any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger?
If not, I'd a motion to approve resolution 2021-199.
Councilman Sukram?
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 9, the move to confirm appointment of Kurt Bodorf as police captain per my recommendation. And so just wanted to, the next 2 items here are in regards to our captain's positions within the police department, and excited to be able to present these to city council tonight. I do have Chief Elliott here, just going to explain kind of the, his restructuring he did within the police department. And again, kind of brief us on that.
Good evening, Jeff Elliott, Chief of Police. What you have before you tonight is the very end of a restructuring program that I began thinking about a year ago. What you have are 2 lieutenants will be elevated to the position of captain. When I first became Chief of Police almost 10 years ago, they sent me to a number of different departments and asked me to look at the organization. One of the reasons for that was at the time we had a chief, a deputy chief, and at when I was promoted, there was no longer a deputy chief and we had 4 lieutenants. So the city administrator at that time asked me to go look at these other departments. I did. I came back and said that the majority of these departments have a structure of, they have a chief of police, 2 captains, and the sergeants under it. We had at the time a chief, 4 lieutenants, and then sergeants. So the plan was to move towards a position where we had chief of police and 2 captains. Unfortunately, we had 4 lieutenants at the time, and the only option they felt that was reasonable was to demote those lieutenants, which I was not in favor of. So nothing got done, and it sat there for a number of years. Recently, we had a lieutenant leave, and another position was half-time. So last year, with the budget coming up, I thought would be a good time to try to attempt to restructure. The restructure, not only the captains, it's also with the co-responder and with a additional sergeant. So tonight is, the idea is to elevate those lieutenants to the position of captain and complete that restructure. However, in the last day or so, I've been contacted by a council member who asked me whether or not it was feasible to promote 3 captains instead of 2. And I would tell you that I'm not opposed to that idea, but I want you to understand my rationale as to why I came with the plan that I did. Initially, my plan for the restructure again was to make us similar to other departments our size, with the chief, the 2 captains, the sergeants under that. Additionally, when I came up with this idea, I thought, I got to find a way to sell this to the council. I know you guys don't like to spend money. You're kind of like my parents when I was a kid, but so I'm trying to find a way to save the city money and still get my plan through. And my thought process was that if I only go with 2 captains, then there'll be a 3rd position, this lieutenant position that didn't get promoted would go away by attrition. So ultimately, you would have more worker bees on the lower end and less queen bees, so to speak, on the top end. So that was my thought process on that. Again, I'm not opposed to looking at all 3 of the individuals being promoted, but I want you all to understand why I came up with the plan that I did. So with that, I'll be willing to take any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Councilman Yerger?
So based on what you just explained, Chief, my questions really go along this line. So the whole process here was driven by a desire to have a structure change.
Yes.
And that it was lieutenant based is what we had, but we wanted to move to being captain based, as you described, chief and captains and then sergeants. So the fact that we have 3, is that more palatable now than when we had 4?
Well, I would say yes, it certainly is. Again, the goal was to reduce the administration and increase. We'd still have the same number of police officers, just kind of redistribute those billets was the idea there. And the idea of having 4 was just, it was so 4 lieutenants was not the normal structure of most police departments our size. So
as I look through the material and as I understand what we put into place previously with regards to compensation for law enforcement, lieutenants are a step different or out of phase, if you will, by a step compared to captains. That is, if you look at a step 4 and lieutenant, that's a step 3 for a captain because they have more headroom, if you will, on the captain side. So in the construct of all of this, was that an issue here, or really was it just getting the structure realigned?
it was getting the structure realigned. As far as that was concerned, I did not take that into consideration.
So, I guess, to me, one of the concerns, and I'll just openly say, you and I we had conversation on this, and I've had conversation with the mayor and others on this as well, as to whether or not, since this is a structure change, would this be more straightforward if we were just to say, it's purely a rank and title change? That's all we're doing in restructuring the police department. And that is, we're going to take lieutenants out of the scheme of the structure, and we're going to replace those with captains. In the end, I understand your goal is to have 2, but we currently have 3. And the duties may be separated between administrative patrol, and detective. And if we kept the three that we have, but only changed their rank titles to captain, that structure would essentially stay intact as far as their duties, pretty close, I assume. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be rearranged much, I assume. I don't know that, but
If we were to end up with three captains instead of two, I would certainly make that work. I'd come up with different arrangements, but yes.
Okay.
In a
and then
nutshell.
when the attrition happens because one of those positions retires or leaves or whatever, you'd be back to two captains you wouldn't fill, and we'd just be back to where we originally wanted to go for structure.
That
would
is
be
correct.
accurate?
And what else I will tell you is that I don't know where the city is going, but if the city would to see substantial population growth in the next 10 years, you might at that point want three captains. I don't know. I can tell you that based on what I saw with Hastings, Columbus, Kearney, South Sioux City, La Vista, all of those organizations at the time had police departments that were similarly sized and had the rank structure of chief, two captains. If we were to grow significantly, you might want three.
Yeah, so you raise a point that I hadn't thought of, but growth in Fremont with regards to what's been going on in our community might certainly be another issue that I hadn't even contemplated in what I was discussing previously with you. But I am also concerned about something that we discussed during budget, and we've discussed many times over, and that is being able to retain police force because of the pay that we have to pay based on our scales versus surrounding communities. We train, they leave, and making sure that we have adequate compensation for our officers and those that are in command is an appropriate thing for us to be trying to address as we go along.
Yes.
So that was some of what drove me to make the calls that I did to you as to, wouldn't this just be much more straightforward if we just said this is purely a structure change? We're changing all the lieutenant titles to captain, and we're moving on.
Yes.
And I gathered from our discussion, and you said tonight, you're not in opposition to that. It just wasn't something you felt you wanted to be able to put forward, at least not at the time of budget. But I guess I'm thinking still, that probably was the more straightforward approach to doing this. Then it's purely a matter of structure.
If I thought you guys would have bought it to begin with, I might have tried it.
And we probably should have done that at the time of budget, quite honestly, just to straighten out the structure, and we'd be having a different conversation now. But I think that's a subject worth looking at.
Councilman Gibson.
I have a question for the chief. Going back to my military background, lieutenant to a captain. As the new captains are going to have a different kind of responsibility from the lieutenants, of course. So how does that work?
Yeah, ideally, the structure at that point with the two captains would have been one in charge of operations and one in charge of what we call administration. The operations captain would handle the overseeing of all the operational personnel, such as detective bureau and patrol. The administration captain would handle logistics, the building, cruisers, videos, all of the secretarial pool, all those sorts of things. The lieutenant, my plan with the lieutenant that didn't get promoted was to put him in patrol to bolster patrol. If we go with three captains, I'll have to come up with a different plan, but it'll probably be very similar to that same scenario that I just discussed.
Councilman Ellis.
So from the backup here, it looks like the Civil Service Commission recommended that there were three individuals. I'm assuming those were the lieutenants. They all applied for this job.
Yes.
And at some point, somebody selected the two that you wanted to move to captain. If we take the modification that Councilman Yerger was talking about, tonight we are promoting two of these to captains. But the third one, we would move to a captain as well. If we take the solution that's been talked about here. Is that something that needs to be done tonight, or can we move all three of them up at the same time?
Mayor and council, I would just advise that the item on the agenda is approving the appointment of the mayor. So if we want to talk about structure or anything like that, that would have to be done at a different meeting.
So would it be best to continue these?
This is approving, or if you want to change the structure or anything like that, you'd have to vote to deny the appointment.
I mean, can we vote to continue these until the next meeting?
continue the approval of the appointment. If that's what you'd like, but the different structure of the.
So I see what you're saying. We're getting off and talking about the structure.
Yep.
So, but what we're talking about here is a valid solution. And so if we can't do any more than just approve these, then another solution would be to continue them until next meeting, where we could probably bring this up and talk about it more freely.
And the only way to get a third potential, if restructuring is done, the only way to get a third potential candidate would have to come from a recommendation from the mayor.
Okay. So we've got the 3 here that were offered. The mayor picked the 2 that are being mentioned tonight.
That is correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm just a little concerned about moving forward if this new structure is going to take place. And so one is the we're going to save us some money as a city, right? Because we would not be when we move these lieutenants up to captains, there's an increase in salary there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we would have to there we're going to get an increase. And so if we move 2 up, we'll get an increase. If we move 3 up, we'll get an increase. But if we move them up and drop them down 1 rank, like Councilman Yeager said, their salary would essentially stay the same.
That may be the case. The way I sold this to my troops, though, that it would be a step increase. So I would want to see that increase. That's me.
You said there would be a step increase?
Yes, that's what I told them.
Okay.
And actually, that's what the council approved as well, back at the budget. So
we approved the captain's raise?
yes.
Okay. I'll leave it up for other discussion.
I'll just want to chime in here. You know, I wanted to give the chief an opportunity to talk about the restructuring in regards to this. Maybe, you know, this item is to appoint Kurt Bodorf as police captain. And so, yes, you know, part of my job as mayor is I do appoint civil service recommendations. I was, you know, given the task based on the budget to appoint 2 captains based on the chief's recommendation, based on what we're doing in Columbus, Hastings, and other cities that he already did research on. Again, these are budgeted items, and I made my selections tonight. And I, you know, stand behind those. You know, in regards to Kurt Bodorf, 1994, he's been in our department and has done a tremendous job. And you know, as the chief explained, as he's talked to his troops about this structure, they have already, you know, developed this and put it into place. And you know, now is not the time to go back and try to redo everything. And I wanted to give the chief the opportunity to talk about the structure because I think it was fair. But in regards to this item and item 10, tonight on the agenda is to confirm number 9, the appointment of Kurt Bodorf as police captain per my recommendation. So I would take at this point, any comments from the public. Any additional comments from council? Councilman Jensen.
That was kind of where my point was going, that Chief Elliott has done his diligence, done his work on this, got it to 2. If we confirm each of these appointments, we're just at 2, but it doesn't take 3 off the table if it becomes necessary or we decide that's the way we want to go. But it still leaves that there.
Councilman Yeager.
So I listened to Councilman Ellis, certainly listened to what Chief Elliott had to say, and you as well, Councilman Jensen. I still personally believe that by leaving Lieutenant Watts out of the mix currently, when all 3 were certified or qualified by the Civil Service Board, when we're looking at a structure change that we could affect without taking individual vote, we would just vote the structure and say we're moving lieutenants to the position of captain and we're done. we're done all at one time. We don't have to have individual discussion and debate. I still think that's the more effective way to do this. It doesn't take away from the mayor's appointments in the sense that all of these people were certified by the Civil Service Commission. So they're all qualified.
Councilman Yeager, they were required to submit 3 names if there were 3 or more applicants. So
But they're all qualified.
that's the reason
according to
there's
their-
3.
According to their report. So I'm going to make a motion to continue the appointments that we have on our agenda tonight to the next meeting so that we can entertain a resolution to adopt the structure that would bring all 3 lieutenants into the new structure and eliminate the lieutenants from the structure altogether without affecting personnel. So I'll make a motion to continue.
Just do one at a time.
I'm doing item 9. Make a motion to continue item 9 to the next meeting while we can entertain dealing with this as a full structure change.
Councilman Legban.
I'm sorry, this is getting ridiculous. All we're trying to do is confirm what the chief and staff has done. They've done their homework, they've done the due diligence, and we're trying to nitpick it. And we've already budgeted for 2. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at a budget for a 3rd. Just not very long ago, I heard people complaining that we set a budget and all of a sudden we're ready to throw more in. So this is getting ridiculous. If there's no one else to talk, well, I see Mr. Ellis wants to talk again. So this is just getting ridiculous.
There was Councilman Legman was already on.
Motion to continue has been raised. Is there a second?
Okay, is there a second? Councilman Ellis.
I second that.
Okay, cast your votes. Yes.
Motion fails 2-6.
Move to confirm appointment of Kurt Bodorf. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve to confirm the appointment of Kurt Bodorf as police captain.
Councilman Legban.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Want to congratulate now Captain Bodorf. He would have loved to have been here. He was attending a wedding right now and just wanted to give his appreciation and is to serve as a police captain for this fine agency would be an honor. So just wanted to make note that he did reach out to me. And again, congratulations to Kurt Bodorf, Captain Bodorf. Item 10, move to confirm appointment of Shane Weimer as police captain per mayor recommendation. Lieutenant Weimer has over 30 years of experience in our police force. And again, this is my recommendation based on the civil service. And so take any questions. Any comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. Though I've not taken issue with Officer Weimer, I've taken issue with City Administrator, City Assistant Weimer. As most of you know, and several of you also have in your possession, a copy of the Baird Home Report in which Mr. Weimer was named in the lawsuit. In that lawsuit, it was alleged intimidation and harassment tactics were used, not only towards Ms. Walker, who brought the lawsuit, but also another employee or 2. And to bear witness to that, there were employees that were named in that as well. And in the throes of performance of his duties, it fell to him to escort an employee whose position was eliminated a person who was the legal secretary out of City Hall without her possessions out of her office. She was not allowed to come and collect her things personally, as other employees had done in times past, whether terminated, resigned, retired, or having a position eliminated. This person was told to pick up her personal belongings at the police station, where she was to be met by Miss McDuffie, HR director, and Officer Weimer in full uniform with a gun. That had not been done to any other employees. The same employee, who is not represented by any council member because she lives just outside of the city limits in the ETJ, contacted me to collect her things because she was actually fearful. So I did. She told me that I would be met by Officer Weimer and the HR director. And this lends truth to some of the validity that was stated in the lawsuit. Now, that had also been settled. It was mediated out, as you all had approved that payout at your prior meeting. I can appreciate 30 years on the law force, and I can appreciate the strength that that has, boots on the ground and the military background. But at what point do you allow that intimidation and harassment to continue? Your vote to support his moving into this, is it going to be a part-time position or is it a full-time position? Where does his position with the city end? And does he become a full public service employee again? That isn't quite spelled out. I am not the only one who has contacted some of you council members, and others have contacted some of you also in relation to this. I would ask that you as council members bring this to the board or to your group tonight to the public hearing. This is something you have to take in consideration. This isn't the only issue of concern, but this is one that I had personal involvement with, unfortunately. And I don't think that this is the only time that you're going to hear of it. You need to take a hard look at who you're promoting in a leadership role. I can appreciate the classes a person takes and that educational background, but it's how you use that. What may not be illegal may have ethical or moral consequences. And I think there have been enough already, some of which have been brought to light over this past year or two. Thank you.
Zoom. Okay, Ray Tuff.
Ray Tuff, 1825 North King, Fremont, Nebraska. I just want to ask Mr. Spellerberg, why would you promote a man that just cost the city a bunch of money of $150,000 in that harassment lawsuit? But Newton has to exit his seat, yet Weimer gets a promotion? What is that? That does not make sense whatsoever. Not to mention, he can't even uphold the law himself, let alone be promoted into a captain position. I don't know whose idea it was to promote him, but I think you need to do a second look, just like Ms. Jacobus has stated. He's not one that we want as a captain of our police force here. Thank you.
Denise Shannon.
Mr. Spellerberg, by recommending Weimer, I have to question your ability to make a rational judgment as a mayor and lead the city. The fact that he has caused and drawn a lot of attention to the city. He has cost the city $150,000. And the fact that you supporting him, what are you saying to the citizens of Fremont and to the city employees? What are you saying? That his actions are okay? That it's okay to act that way? Even though it's going to cost the city lawsuits, go ahead and be that way. We'll promote you. Sounds like the good old boy system at its best. You need to take a second look at what he has caused recently. He may have an awesome record from the past, but his actions as a person speak louder. You continue to disappoint me.
Comments from the public? I would just like to say, the Civil Service Commission is there to give recommendations. They don't bring forward anybody that's not ready to go and qualified for the position. That's part of the civil service's job. And Lieutenant Weimer has, like I said, 30 years of experience in our law enforcement. And that means something, especially in this environment where, there's a new law being passed, LB 51 within the state, requiring more training, more things to be done inside the police department. Experience matters. And so, I just, as I sit here, feel as the mayor, want to be able to move on and be able to look to the future. And I think I brought forward tonight my choice for captains. And again, stand behind those. Councilman Legman.
If there's no more comments from council.
I was done with public comment. Go ahead.
If there's no more comments from council, I would like to move to confirm the appointment of Shane Weimer as the captain. And I'm sorry you had to sit through this tonight. I'm sorry.
Councilman Yerger.
I'd like to make an amendment to Councilman Legman's motion to make his motion conditional on the receipt of a resignation from this appointee from the position of Assistant City Administrator. Just to clarify, in fact, that in changing positions in law enforcement, he's leaving the position of Assistant City Administrator. So I ask that that be a conditional approval amendment.
I didn't make that clear. My apologies, but yes, if Lieutenant Weimer is confirmed as a captain, I believe he will no longer serve in the Assistant City Administrator role. And so he will be full-time over in the police department. And so that is clear. I believe, according to Jennifer, it's January 3rd. And I think when I emailed council out, I had a wrong date. It's January 3rd is when his first day will be as full-time in the police department. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was gonna be my point. I knew I'd got an email or something in the packet, but that was in fact what was going to happen was that the assistant administrator job would be disappearing, whether it's promoted to captain or not.
And I would just add, I'm not sure the council can place conditions on an appointment. It's either confirming or denying the appointment. That would be an issue. If there's issues with that, then I would have your vote be to deny the appointment. I'm advising the council that there's an issue with raising that amendment.
I still have a motion and my motion is to go forward the way it
Yeah,
is.
and if it were a part-time position, it wouldn't be a civil service position.
Okay, Councilman Vaughn.
I believe we effectively dissolved that position a couple of meetings ago when we changed the city administrator role and the utilities role. That position is effectively eliminated, and I would second the motion.
Technically, that position hasn't been eliminated yet. That'll be brought back. Would be the first meeting in January.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
For one moment, there was a motion to approve the appointment, and then there was a motion to make an amendment, but that's not what we're seconding here. We're just seconding the original motion.
There was a motion made. I would just advise that the council not approve the amendment. So we can look for a second for the amendment.
Okay.
The amendment would be the first one that's voted on.
Okay. Is there a second to the amendment?
Yeah.
Councilman Vaughn, second to, no, where are we at here? Okay. Yes, okay, so is there a second to amend? Okay, motion dies for lack of second. We'll go back to the original motion. There was a second by Councilman Vaughn. Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-2.
Thank you, Captain Weimer. I believe you're here with your family. Thank you for taking some time out of your Christmas and New Year's break to be here. Thank you for all your efforts within. Thank you. Moving on to item 11. Is a resolution 2021-201 to renew a 3-year agreement with Velocity EHS for safety data sheets management program. This time we'll have staff report.
All right. Troy Shaban, Assistant City Administrator, Utilities. Velocity EHS provides us with our current SDS program that we use for the Department of Utilities. It's our safety data sheet program. It allows us to access from any computer in our system any chemical that any employees will be using, provides the safety data sheet, eye hazard, inhalation, fire, flammable, all that stuff. Allows us to know how to render proper first aid and how to do proper cleanup of all the chemicals in the system. It's a 3-year contract. You see it starts at, the total for the 3 years is $12,052. It starts at $3,899 and goes up 3% the next 2 years. I can answer any questions anybody has. We haven't had any problems with this system.
Any questions for staff? Okay, any comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. The only reason why I brought this off the consent agenda was because of your second whereas statement. This was published and put in the agenda prior to the end of last week. And so there's no way that the Utility and Infrastructure Board had met already and that they voted to recommend. So since this is on the same day and you don't, and this was pre-printed and published and presented to you as council and to the public, I would ask that you remove that second whereas statement. It doesn't do anything denigrate from the overall resolution other than it makes it appear like no matter what the infrastructure board discusses, it doesn't matter because you've already had this published and printed. And it shouldn't have been presented the way it was, or perhaps maybe should be presented at an earlier time and consideration. So that could be included in the paragraph, but right now it doesn't make sense to even have it in there.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
So I'm just trying to clarify what was just said. Looking at resolution 2021-201. The copy in my packet has a whereas statement that says the UIB meeting was on the 14th. 5-0 vote, is that accurate? So. Okay, I just wanted to be clear. I'm looking at the right thing.
Okay, Councilman Legban.
Make a motion to approve if there's no other discussion. A motion to approve resolution 2021-20.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, item 12 is a resolution 2021-202 authorizing the purchase of primary general liability and excess insurance with Everest National Insurance Company and associated electric and gas insurance services unlimited. Go ahead, Jody.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Jody Sanders, Director of Finance. You have before you a resolution to approve the utilities general and excess liability insurance renewals, a proposal prepared by Aon Risk Solutions. We did see a premium increase of just under 6%, which isn't surprising for general liability. The excess coverage also saw an increase. Part of that increase is due to, because it's liability, it's based on the payroll values for both in the electric fund and the gas fund for those workers that are out doing the kinds of things that could cause problems in the community with power interruptions or anything to do with a gas leak or anything like that. So you'd see the increase in that payroll then corresponds into an increase of insured values as well. So as I mentioned, the UIB was to consider this earlier today. You'll notice the policy dates on this. I got the information from the insurance company on December 21st. Our current policy expires December 31st. So we didn't have an opportunity to have it considered separately on the 14th by UIB and then tonight for the council by the 28th. The board did meet this afternoon and by a 5-0 vote approved passing this resolution on to the city council. I'd take any questions.
Councilman Sukram.
No, sorry.
Okay. Any questions for staff? This item. Seeing none, any comments from the public? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
This particular resolution 2021-202 fits the scenario that was described by a member of the public on the previous item in the second whereas statement, and it was alluded to by the finance director in the report that was given that yes, the utility board met on December 28th. That's accurate. Voted to recommend the policies be renewed was not something we could have known when our agendas were published, and there is no public record relative to their published minutes or whatever. And I've suggested for a long time, that's a problem. We need to, in my opinion, I'd like to adjust the resolution language to strike and voted to recommend the policies renewed, give them credit for meeting And the fact that we're going to spend $160,000, but not record a vote in our resolution as though it occurred and we knew about it last Wednesday when their stuff was due. I understand that the timeline was such that they couldn't have met. I'm sensitive to that, but the council can act on that without a vote recognition of something that occurred today, an hour earlier. And that's what I think we need to do, and striking that phrase allows us to do it.
Could I ask the council member a question? How do we strike that balance? Because for the Utility and Infrastructure Board to meet and then wait 2 weeks for the city council to meet, there are lots of things in the process of the utilities that we're not going to be able to split it out by 2 weeks. There's too much that's time sensitive. So Troy did it, quote, the right way. I was trying to, because the fact is, as of tonight, it was approved. If it had not been approved for some reason, then we would have an opportunity to amend the resolution. If we make no mention of it, you want to amend the resolution to add what happened at the UIB.
No, I've not been suggesting that at all. All I'm suggesting is that that statement can end at they met to consider the policy renewal. That's factual. But entertaining a recognition of a vote they took an hour before our meeting started, when they have no published minutes indicating that they took such a vote and what that vote was, I think does a disservice to us. And striking that does nothing more to the resolution except cleaning it up as to the fact we didn't have that recognition at the time we got our materials. And I understand that we couldn't because they didn't meet till today. That's fine.
Right.
So we can just stop that whereas statement with they met and considered the renewals.
Thank you.
And that's fine. I have no objections to that. I'm not suggesting striking the whole statement, just those few words, and voted to recommend the policy be renewed.
Thank you.
As being something we don't need and they haven't put into the public record in their own minutes yet. So I make a motion to make an amendment to resolution 21-202 for that purpose.
Okay. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify here. There is nothing in this whereas statement that is not true. Everything that is said here happened. They took a vote, they voted to recommend. If they had voted not to recommend, I imagine we would have pulled this item off the agenda. There's nothing wrong with this exactly the way it is.
Councilman Legman.
And I would agree with Mr. Jensen there that it's just in there, the way it says is telling the truth, shows what happened. So I don't see a point in having to get rid of it.
Councilman Ellis.
I appreciate your questioning us, Jody, because I haven't liked this since I've been on council where there's been a forecast of a vote. And so if you could just put it in that, whereas the utility board will be meeting on this date, and then you can bring us, if we want, you can bring us that information, but to put something in writing, forecasting a future governance issue, I have problems with. And so I would just say, let's strike the forecasting and just give us the information we need, that they're going to be meeting with it earlier today, and that if we want, we can get the information from you. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. And I second the vote.
Okay. Everybody clear on this amendment? Okay. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-3.
Okay, I'd take a motion in regards to the resolution as amended. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make a motion on the resolution as amended.
Councilman Legman.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay. Then item 13 was pulled is to add a resolution number. So it's resolution 2021-204. Authorizing staff to apply for a grant for the Civic and Community Center Financing Fund for renovation of King Memorial Library.
Just adding the resolution number.
Is that all that it was pulled for?
That's correct.
Okay. Do we need to act on that that amendment, or can we just
I think
act on the
because we didn't
resolution?
approve it during the consent portion, we probably need to approve it now.
Okay. I would just take a motion to approve this resolution. Councilman Gibson,
I'll make that motion to make that 2021-204.
okay. Councilman Vaughn,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to new business. Item 14 is a resolution 2021-203 adopting and approving a business improvement district board operational policy. This time we'll have Councilman Yerger who would give the report.
Yes, this is just a foundational policy to be utilized for the next couple of years while we've granted the extension to the BID board. It puts into effect some things that were not put into the Fremont Municipal Code when we rewrote section 10-700. And rather than reopen 10-700, it was under the instruction that it would be better to put this into a resolution policy form now, and that we could incorporate it later into municipal code rather than going through the 3 readings to try to accomplish this by changing code again. So it basically just provides foundational guidance. It's similar to other language for other boards and commissions like the UIB and library. Indicates how they need to operate in general, and the board members' terms and those kind of things. Pretty standard, which is reflective, like as I said, in municipal code for other boards and commissions. And this is kind of a unique board in that, albeit it had a 5-year tenure on it, would be more of a permanent type board than one that we would have appointed and have been in effect for a few months or less than a year. And so these kinds of things are typically put into municipal code. So rather than do that, this is just a policy that governs that now for the interim, and to be taken up at the time when this extension expires in 2 years, and we have to deal with this either as a full renewal again, or we won't have to take it up because it's not extended. Take any questions that we might have. I know, I guess, and maybe I should throw the floor to legal. I don't know if you want to do that after the fact, because I know that legal offered an amendment to what we've got before you tonight that came out later, and it's not in, I don't think it's in the packet. So you might want to address what you suggested that were adjustments to what's here before we get to even public comment. So I'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you, Councilman Yerger. Mayor, City Council, I did send out a couple slight amendments to the policy. Let me pull them up here just so I make sure I get the wording exactly the same way. There was an issue of how big the board would be and filling vacancies, and based upon discussions with the mayor and members of council, I came up with a couple of amendments. First one is under the third whereas statement. It says after the semicolon, this initial policy, it says shall be reviewed. I struck that and put may be reviewed just to give the council clarity as to what their ability will be to change, how they would adopt an ordinance when this is eventually put into city code in the future, if it is. And then the second change is under the requirements section. The second paragraph there, after the first sentence, I would recommend adding the language, any removal or resignation of a board member shall not constitute a vacancy, and the board after any removal or resignation shall be made up of the remaining number of members resulting therefrom. And then I struck the line that said all members shall hold office until their successors are appointed. And that gets rid of the issue of having to maintain a 14-member board. It appeared that mayor and council did not wish to do that should members resign or be removed. That would be my recommendation to effectuate that policy.
Councilman Legband.
Okay, I just have a question for the BID members. Have you guys had a chance to look at this, and you guys are okay with these with this?
We have had a chance to look at it.
You have had a chance?
We have had a chance to look at it.
We'll have public comment and
Oh,
then
I'm sorry.
then you'll be able to ask
Okay,
if,
sorry.
I'll give the
Yep.
staff report if you need one.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Not sure this is the time because I'd like to add another recommendation then for a change. And that would be under requirements, business improvement board members term and vacancy toward the bottom when it says one non-voting city council member shall be appointed to the board by the mayor and approved by the city council to serve as the city council's liaison to the board. Right now, we do have a protocol where the city council members are requested by the mayor to serve as liaison or resource people to various boards, as I serve on the library and Ridge Cemetery and Keep Fremont Beautiful boards. And so I can be representing the city and a liaison between those groups and the city. My approval was not, I was not approved by the city council. So that would change. We're saying approved by city council for this particular board, and that changes protocol. And at this time, I would think we would want to remove that approved by city council because it changes the protocol for all. I think all boards need to be treated exactly the same. And if we want to change protocol, then we need to bring that back next year. Sounds like a long time, but we need to change it for all and not just do it for one and not the others. So I guess I would like to remove and approved by the city council.
Okay. Okay, I think we need to get to that amendment. I just want to have opportunity for public comment, those that are here that may wish to speak on this item. So this is your opportunity for the public. Okay, legal, if there's a question from council from some, are they able to ask that and bring that person forward at this time? I just wanted to make sure to honor Councilman Legman's request if he wanted to.
A question of a BID board member, the currently seated BID board
Yes.
member. It'd be similar to requesting, having a question from staff. So that'd be
Okay,
fine.
all right, now would be the time, Councilman Legman, if
This new policy, and are you guys okay with it? That's all I want to know.
I've read the resolution and
name and address, please. Thank you.
excuse me, Tom Cody, 2625 County Road 11,
Thank
Fremont,
you.
Nebraska. And I'm chairman of the BID board. And I'm not sure exactly why the resolution was even brought up. We have our own bylaws that we put into effect in 2019, and the resolution has quotes a bunch of state statutes that we're governed by. So I'm not sure why there's even a need for a resolution, but that's for you people to decide, I guess.
Okay.
And I do want to add, I want to thank you. You guys are working hard to try and solve the problems. You're working as a board. You've found out some of the problems you want to work through. And I think you're doing a great job. You've done everything we've asked of you. And I think you're doing a great job. And so I want to thank you for that.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. So now, Councilman Ganem, I would, I guess, take if there's any other comments from council before I go to the amendment. Seeing none. Yes, yes. So it's Councilwoman Ganem's amendment right now to strike. Is that still on the floor or not? I did, yes. Yes. Councilman Jensen.
No, if there was another comment, I was just going to second her amendment.
Cast your votes on that amendment.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Jensen.
I'm not sure exactly how to go about this, but I would like to recommend that the amendments that have been brought forth by council. I'll make that by legal. I'll make that as a motion.
Okay, Councilman Yerger.
I'd like to amend Councilman Jensen's motion to make one other adjustment. So we could vote on those things separately. Legal counsel wants to change shall to may, which is a less directive statement than was anticipated with regards to what council will do. And my concern there is that in the preparation of all of this, we didn't put this into a Fremont Municipal Code section 10-700 on purpose by legal counsel's recommendation that we do a resolution. And part of that compromise was that we would in fact then build it into code at the time we looked at the BID's extension at the end of the 2-year extension we just got. If it were to be continued, we would be putting something into code. If the council decided not to continue BID, no action would be necessary. And that was the compromise, that we would be making that review and incorporating it into code. It wasn't going to be a maybe, it was that the future council would do so. So I would like to amend the council or Mr. Jensen's recommendation to accept legal's recommendations to only accept the larger modification and amendment what was made to the 3rd paragraph of the resolution, but not to incorporate the adjustment to the whereas statement.
Councilman Ellis.
I'm going to second that motion because I don't know if you guys have looked at our municipal code, but there's just a lot of junk out there. And it happens because of what we're doing tonight, that if we don't do anything, we're going to have municipal code in there that's dated from today or 2022 and not be replaced with anything. So I think it's our responsibility as a council to put stuff like shall instead of may, so that when 2 years comes up, the council that's seated then has to clean up the code and make it relevant. Because if they don't do anything and we don't do anything, we're going to be sit here with municipal code that's old, that's out of date and worthless. And so that was one of my main things is coming on council is our municipal code has been neglected, has been just forgotten about. And I believe we need to spend time as a council to try to bring it up to date and make sure that every piece of that municipal code is relevant. So I second this amendment by accepting the larger, but still remaining shall as opposed to may. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion, a second to change the may to shall. That's where we're at this point. So cast your votes on that. The motion and the second was to amend legal's amendment to put it back from shall, the amend, yes. Yep.
Motion carries 6-2.
Okay, so now I take a motion, Councilman Yerger.
So now you need a motion to adopt legal's recommendation for the 3rd paragraph of the
requirements. Yeah, there was
Or then I'll be
Jensen,
there for-
Jensen had a motion, I think.
Oh, okay.
That was,
What-
I have both.
So now if
So
we,
now it goes forward with just that one on it, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
amendment took out.
Amended amendment.
So-
Okay,
okay.
we
So-
need to
so
vote
now-
the resolution as
so
amended.
now I'll make, So does Mark need to make that or? Okay, so I'm
There was
just
already,
I'm just gonna make a second to the amended motion that Mr. Jensen has on the floor.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the resolution's been amended
Twice.
fully to what the council wants. So now we just need to vote on the
Amended
amended resolution.
Okay, so motion by Jensen, second by Yerger. So we're ready to vote. Is everybody clear? No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cast for votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, item 15. Motion to request and direct staff to compile EOY annual detailed sources and uses of fund statements, income statements for the business improvement district's operations during 2017 through 2021. Councilman Yerger.
Yes, this was put on the agenda tonight, pretty much in response to a request that was made by the public at the last meeting with regards to being able to be have readily transparent financial records with regards to BID. And so what I'm proposed here is that there be an annual sources and uses of funds report, which is a more detailed report and in greater historical detail than what the BID is currently getting. And I do want to applaud the BID for asking for a financial report and for the financial director posting something out for their use on a regular basis for their meetings. And so I want to acknowledge they're doing that. And by the way, I want to acknowledge also their work and effort to get their bylaws and stuff done, as we just discussed in the previous item as well, because they definitely are working. But what they've asked for in their spending report isn't what was asked for by the public. And I think the council needs a more detailed report for purposes of doing its budget work and its analysis of the BID that was discussed. As we will get a report in June of this year. We'll get another report in June of the following year as we go into the budget cycle, so that we would be able to assess fully the effects that BID has had on the improvement in downtown. And the way that we would do that is with a more detailed record than you're currently producing, I guess, Jody. So my comments are somewhat directed to you. When it says more detailed, there are very limited sources of what you would have for sources, because they have the assessments, and they may be collecting some funding from Main Street because they have requests out to get Keno funds for some things that they would turn over, I suppose, to the BID. I'm not sure. But anyway, there would be perhaps multiple uses. There'd be very limited. And then there would be expenditures that go on throughout the year. I don't expect those to be in great in number either. And I know they're listed in the claims, and so people can go and find them, but they're not succinctly laid out in a report that would be useful to council and to the public when they're analyzing what did the $48,000 and the $100,000 that's currently in the balance get spent on during the next 2 years. And so that's the purpose of doing the sources and uses of funds statement here. At least that was the intent. I'm happy to dialogue with that about you if you have questions, but the whole purpose was to get to enough granular detail that we actually know where the inflows were and what all of the outflows were when we get into the budgeting cycle.
So Councilmember Yerger, the report that I provided to you has the detail as to the purpose that was outlined in the original ordinance that was put into play effective in 2017. I'm also showing it on a calendar year basis because that is how the BID is structured in terms of an assessment. It doesn't follow our fiscal year. So you mentioned earlier in your conversation about something in June. I wasn't quite following what you were referring to with that.
When we went through the extension deliberation about giving the BID an extension for 2 rather than 5 years, one of the stipulations was that we would get a report in June from the BID, both this coming year and the next. As a part of that report, the supposition would be is that includes financial information. I understand that they're on a calendar basis. And so, maybe the report that we would get mid-year this year would be on a calendar basis. The one that we would see at budget time needs to be reflective of the money that we gave them before we would extend the BID and give them a different or an expanded budget. We need to know how well we handled the money that we've already assigned. That's the purpose of this, not trying to make it complex. So if there's problems between annual and budget cycle or whatever, we can work through those. The intent is for us to know and have a good understanding when we go through this at the budget where the money went.
And are you looking for specific, because I did provide to the council, because I was requested by a council member, check by check, everything that was spent was sent to the city council. The way that I've grouped it is the way that it's laid out in the ordinance. So help me understand, is what you're looking for simply a check register, or what is it that you're wanting more than what's already been provided?
Well, I'm just going to make up some examples and you can tell me how this would be reflected in the reporting that you're doing or what I'm asking for. There's been some discussion. We haven't finalized it yet, but they're contemplating perhaps putting in a speaker system. Okay, that would be an expenditure. We've already expended in the past for, floral arrangements on Main Street or park benches or bike racks or whatever we would be spending the money on. And my expectation, I think from what the folks in the public were asking us for, is you can't lump that all into one thing and say improvements. That doesn't tell anyone anything as to what you spent the money on. You spend it on the florals, you spend it on park benches, you spend it here. And those would be separate checks that would have been, yes, they would have been expended in separate checks, but there might be a dozen of those or 25, I don't know, over the course of a year that would have been in the claims. And we can find them there, but we hopefully shouldn't have to look them up as members of the BID or council if we wanted to have dialogue about what was the spending. We should encapsulate that in a report. That's what this is about. And that's what I thought the public was asking for. And that's why I asked for it.
So
you can call it a check register if you like. I guess it's a check written to XYZ for park benches, a check written for XYZ for speakers, a check written for flowers, a check written to Main Street for employment costs because we're paying for some of the employment costs over there. If that's what you view as a check register, then I guess that is what I'm asking for. Otherwise, I'm just looking for a listing of expenditures that accounts for what would be $140-some thousand.
And the report that I gave you shows you that, because a park bench and floral arrangements clearly would be under beautification.
But not separately.
Okay, so you want more, that doesn't sound like a financial report to me. That sounds more like the BID presenting you with how they're spending each and every dime that leaves that particular fund.
Those expenditures do come over here, as I understand, and we approve them. Is that also correct?
That's correct. It's they're part of the claims.
And they're in the claims report. I'm just saying, as a council member, and I hope the other council members would agree, when it gets to budget time, I certainly don't want to have to go to your claims report and look these all up. I'd like to have presented to me as a council member, what did the BID have for income? What did the BID spend that income on? In a succinct fashion, so we can just look and say, very wise decision-making, all improvements to downtown. You're asking me for an extension. You're asking me for more money. I'm in favor of it. Now I know how we're operating. It's just a matter of transparency in that regard and making it easy for council members. And I think hopefully for BID members as well, because as I looked at the report that you're currently giving them, it doesn't have that kind of detail on it. they would know because of the minutes of their meeting, I assume, that what they approved to spend.
Mhm.
But I'm not reading those every time they meet. I would like to have a report that summarizes that for council. That's what's proposed here.
But what you're asking for is beyond what a normal financial statement would provide, because you're looking for purpose. The specific purpose, why, because there's been a number of payments made to Main Street Fremont. Many of them are simply reimbursing Main Street for their purchase of some kind of equipment or beautification or what have you out down in the downtown.
Councilman
I have a
Gibson.
question. Jody, don't they do an annual report? Are they required, BID required an annual report that entails everything that happened this last year, expenses and income?
We don't,
No?
they don't receive that.
Well, I go along with Councilman Yurger. I think they need to do an annual report and everything that comes in, income and expenditures. To me, that's just a common sense of doing business.
Any other question? Any other questions? Any comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. After much pushing and prodding and questioning and asking, a BID member had given me some information. In 2018, $15,431.92, which included $12,000 paid to Main Street. In 2019, they spent $27,774.27, including the amount of $16,980 paid to Main Street. And in 2020, they spent $23,503.86, including the $11,346.50 paid to Main Street. This was after many questions to you as council members, many questions of several members of the BID, and continued questions. And thank you, Mr. Councilman Gibson, for stating that there should be an annual report. Shouldn't take a member of the public or great consternation and discussion at the council level to get the same information. This information is taken from account activity that was supplied to BID members. And now I'm hearing that the council received similar information. The public had to find it on their own, and I'm not the only one that had been asking. Interesting that over $42,000 has been paid to Main Street in 2021, but only this year, $2,350 was paid out to Main Street on that. They took in 42 grand, paid out $2,300 to Main Street, which is the lowest amount they paid since their inception to Main Street. I don't know where all the rest of the dollars go. I appreciate the beautification projects, whether it's park benches, bike racks, and flowers. I believe the downtown needs improving, and it needs our investment at the city level and support from the taxpayers and also from the council. However, thank you, Councilman Gitzman and Councilman Yurger, for requesting an annual audit. That is taxpayers' dollars. It's no different than the reports you get and give to the public through the agenda, the accounting of all the different departments' activities and expenditures. Yes, you approve it collectively, but it should be itemized. You have smaller tax dollars, but again, this is $240,000 over a small group of businesses. Some of them are paying less, some of them paying more due to the value of their businesses. But it is still taxpayer expenditures of which you are the body that has to have oversight. Thank you.
Tom Cody, 2625 County Road 11, Fremont, Nebraska. I appreciate the request for an annual report. And just to clarify, some of the payments to Main Street, is difficult to deal with some small vendors
and then have them wait for the city to write them a check. Takes a long time to get paid. So in some cases, we go to Main Street, have them pay the bill right away, and then we reimburse Main Street when the city has an opportunity to write the check. And we can be much clearer for you folks on when it's simply a reimbursement for one of our bills because they stepped up and paid the vendor in advance. And then we reimburse them when they have time to, when the city has time to write a check for it. So we can be clearer on that. I don't know where the June time period came from. I've never seen that in writing, or the only time I've ever heard that is the mayor told me that we'll be back in June with a 6-month report on what BID is doing. I'll do whatever you guys want, but I've never heard that I need to be back here in June until the mayor told me that. So I don't know where that comes from. I've never seen it in writing. I've never been to a meeting where June has ever been talked about. So, and I could be wrong. I might have missed a meeting, or I might have missed something in it, but we'll be clearer on where the money is spent. So it's easy for you to understand. It's easy for the people in the BID who are paying the taxes. It's easier for them to understand where the money goes. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer that. But one other thing is we are going to publish a financial statement with our minutes every month so that it'll be posted on the BID website. What the incoming money was and where the outgoing money went. So it'll be clear all the time where what's being spent. And we'll make it clear that if Main Street prepaid the bill, then Main Street and then BID reimburses them. We'll let you know where that money went to, what it was spent on.
Councilman Yerger.
Thank you, Tom, for that. And I want to reiterate the fact that I appreciate the efforts that I see the BID going through and the things that they're attempting to change and accomplish. So I want to give you guys credit for that. You said something at the previous meeting and again tonight. So I want to make sure, because I asked the finance department to do this, because I thought at the previous meeting you indicated that all the finance records are kept and maintained by the finance department. So rather than impose this task on the BID themselves, where you don't have a treasurer, city serves as the treasurer, I'm sort of directed this request for this report to come from the finance department rather than from the BID. Now,
I
I'm certainly
appreciate that.
amenable to having the BID produce this themselves.
No, I'm fine with the city furnishing the financial report. I don't understand why we can't just ask her to give us a financial report. I don't know why we have got to go through this voting process on it to get a report, because it's clear.
Well, the problem, Tom, is this. We haven't been getting one. Unless we take the authority to authorize that we want one, we may continue to not get what we need. And when it came to budget, and I'm not married to June by any stretch, maybe that was a misstatement. But budgets are worked on, like the last one we just went through, were worked on during the middle of the year. They weren't finalized, and we didn't learn about what the BID's request was until September, I think, or August or whatever. We didn't have any pre-discussion even about the request as being increased, and it wasn't supported by any information we were given. And as a result, we went into that budget approval without having had any discussion or detail about what to do and what the BID was requesting and what your future plans were. That shouldn't happen. The budget cycle doesn't start at the end of the year. The budget cycle for us starts and goes throughout the year, and we're finalizing that in September. So we've got to have financial information in a more timely fashion in order to accomplish that. And hopefully what we're asking for will work for the BID as well. We certainly want it to. trying to work in tandem here with what the city's going to produce and
Right.
what you guys need to use and what we need as council. They're slightly different things, but they share many similarities. So I'm not trying to create work, just to make sure we both entities get what we need to do our job.
Yeah, and it's not a problem for us to give you budget numbers in prior to whenever you need them, if you need them in August or whatever you need them. It's not a problem for us to give you budget numbers. And we've already done that for the next 2 years.
Councilman Vaughn.
I want to thank the PID for the structural changes that you've been through, going from a 2-year or from a 5-year to a 2-year budget cycle, and the increase in transparency that I've seen. I don't see a need for this, and I'll be voting no.
Councilman Gibson.
Once again, I'm looking at the motion tonight, and it looks like, to me, that looks like an annual report. And that's all we're asking for.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Go ahead.
Barb Bushy, 2037 East First. First of all, I want to thank Councilman Gibson and Councilman Yerger for clarifying things. I understand if Main Street pays for something and BID reimburses them, how hard is it under memo to put, okay, we are reimbursing $200 for flowers. Okay, write another check. Why can't they just do that each time? And I can understand, I'm not an accountant, so on a financial report, I can see where you probably lump a lot of things as like improvements or whatever. But I think as a citizen, we need more clarification. You know. And yes, I do appreciate, because downtown's looking better. It is, you know, and I want downtown to get a lot better. There's a lot of things we can do, but that's my only thing, is we need more itemized answers or explanations for where the expenditures are going.
Okay, any additional comments from council? Councilwoman Ganem.
No, I'd certainly like to echo everyone's appreciation, because BID certainly is on a track to go forward. Definitely, and certainly appreciate all their work and efforts, and the efforts of Jody working with them too. A monthly finance statement, itemized, will certainly account. They've already started that. They're planning to start to do that every month. They've already started to do a number of things, and I think that will continue definitely. And a compiling of that, maybe by BID, doesn't have to be Jody, if they already have a monthly report, would not be that difficult to really just say, here's part of the report as a financial report.
Councilman Jensen.
Just for clarification for the public, I want to make sure I'm on the right page here. We are not talking about public tax funds, correct? We're talking about BID funds from just specifically from that district?
Yes, correct. Okay, Councilman Ellis.
Aren't they considered public tax funds? Okay, I just want to make sure that they are considered public tax funds.
Are we ready? for a
Councilman
motion?
Gibson.
You ready for a motion?
Go ahead.
Well, I would make the motion request the direct staff to compile an annual report, detailed sources and uses of funds statements, income statements for the business improvement district operations during 2017 to 2021.
Councilman Yerger.
Second the motion.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 5-3.
Item 16, receive report and or discuss the status of the law enforcement building study approved March 30th, 2021 in resolution 2021-050. which awarded a contract to Prohaska and Associates. Councilman Ellis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Jody, just for my benefit and maybe the public benefit, can you, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I'm just asking for ballpark numbers, but during our budget period, we put aside quite a bit of money for our police department. I believe we had a $5 million set aside, and then I thought we had a couple of other larger chunks adding up to somewhere close to 10 million. That's the ballpark numbers. Okay, so we as a city went through our budget cycle last June, July, and August, and we've set aside $10 million for a police station. We had this report that was supposed to have been given to us in September. It does have a date of September 4th. It never was presented. And kind of interesting why Prohaska never came to the council to present this report. Because just, you know, the firefighters had their report. They came back and presented it. So, but this report's been sitting on somebody's desk for a long time. I had to make the request to get it. And so it's an interesting report. It looks pretty thick, but don't be deceived. About half of it is their report from 2014 and their other report from 2017. So it is some good reading. And again, I'm hoping this will be made available to the public, the new report. But the new report findings is, I know that we've talked at long periods of time about Joint Law Enforcement Center or whatever. The citizens voted down the Joint Law Enforcement Center up on Tech Park for many reasons, and I guess we'll never know the exact reason, but it did get voted down. What I want to bring to the council's attention tonight is on page 5-7 is we have been fighting or struggling with the police department's building. I believe the previous mayor said he started this fight back in 2010. There was a 2012 report. It's been going on for a long time. I want to make it my mission before my first term is over that we have shovels in the ground, that we get a police station building soon. We've got the money. If you look at 5-7, and I know the public can't, but this is a comparison summary point where it states the police department property development standalone facility. Our police department would simply use the facility they have and build a new one where the garage is, move everyone over there, and then remodel the existing building. So it's a very, there's room to expand there. We've got a small little area next to the, there's a tattoo parlor there now. So there's many different options, but what these guys came back with was for a 35,000 square foot building using their 2014 idea of, again, tearing down the garage, building a brand new building there, and then moving over. The cost, today's cost would be $9,051,000. Guys, we got $10 million sitting in the bank. I think it's time to get shovel ready. I think it's time to move forward and to get our policemen the new building deserve. And from there, we can start then working on figuring out what we need to do to our fire station. So that's just an opening statement, and I hope there's some good conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Legman.
I would agree, it's time, but we just got 197 or 87 pages yesterday, and we're supposed to have good discussion on it. I don't think so. I'm not ready to have good discussions on this until we have time to study it. Talk to the people involved, not just what we want, but what the police need and want, and what the other people need and want. I'm all for looking at this. I'm all for starting some group discussions, study sessions, looking at this, not just saying, all right, here it is. So I am totally with you, and I hope we can get this done, but I'm obviously not ready to hash this over tonight until we have discussions with everyone else involved and everyone else, not just right now. So I hate to do this, but I would just make a motion to continue this until after we've had time to study this and have had group discussions and had time, look at this in depth.
Okay. Is there a second? I guess we have to have a second. Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I'll second the motion to continue.
Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-2.
Okay, item 17. It's a motion to approve the appointment of Jody Sanders as interim city administrator effective January 4th, 2022. So I did mention this a little bit in my comments. Again, I want to thank council for the quickness and being able to get the positions separated. And so you see tonight before you Jody Sanders as interim city administrator, then following will be utilities general manager. Jody's been with the city of Fremont now, what is it, 14 years? And so I know she's excited to hit the ground running. And I'll just mention that, she had a little quote in the paper and I agree with her. It says, I've got a great group of folks to be working with, department heads, utility folks. It's going to be a team effort. And I think that's spot on. Moving forward in this interim, it's definitely going to be a team effort. And so again, excited to have Jody thank her for kind of accepting this interim role. So take any questions. Councilman Yerger.
I just have a couple questions, mostly for my personal edification, I guess, with regards to this going to pick an extra load, obviously, on those that are stepping up to fill the gaps. And there was a discussion about out of classification pay as associated with that. So my question is really sort of for HR, I guess. What's the handbook guidance with regards to the percent of pay adjustments required for, because we said we can't identify, we have no idea how many, Jody may never get to go home. So it could be a lot of overtime, I guess, I don't know. But is there something that's defined in the handbook with regards to what out of classification costs would be? And then my secondary question, I guess, really is one for a departmental concern for both you and on the next item. Does this in any way anticipate affecting other employees being subject to additional load and receiving out of classification pay because of the load we're putting on your department?
Jennifer's apparently not here, but I can tell you that the handbook is a 5% increase when you're working outside of classification. That's from union contracts all the way through the organization. You have to assume full responsibility for the position. And so the answer is no, there wouldn't be out of class pay for others in my department to help fill the gap. It's falls under all other duties as assigned.
So in other words, you're not going home.
Pretty much, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other Councilman Vaughn?
If there was no other discussion, I'd like to make the motion.
Councilwoman Gannon?
Second.
Are there, before I need to have public comment on this, is there any public comment? Okay.
Can you hear me all right with this on? Okay, Barb Bushy, 2037 East First. I'm totally in favor of having Jody be our interim, and if she's so qualified to take the position when it comes open. I hope Jody, well, I'm sure Jody will consider and be allowed to consider to support projects for all of Fremont, not just the select few. And I feel that Jody I'm confident in her awareness of what our financial situation is and that she can handle it. And that's it.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? There's a motion and a second. Cast your vote.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, item 18 is to move and approve the appointment of Troy Shaban as interim utility general manager effective January 4, 2022. Also, Troy has been with the city for a long time. I believe him and Jody started very similar times. So again, Troy currently serves as our assistant on the utility side. And so again, a lot of experience, and I'm excited that he's willing to accept the role as our interim. So again, I take any questions. Any comments from the public? There are none. I take a motion in regards to this item. Councilman Gibson.
I will make that motion.
Councilman Yerger. Okay, cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 19, receive and discuss legal's clarification, interpretation of Nebraska state statutes and the city's Fremont Municipal Code regarding the definition of emergency disaster, as well as the city side and utility side's ability and process for declaring an emergency, waiving the 30,000 3-bid lowest bid expenditure rules, and the timing for obtaining council's spending authorization. Legal, go ahead with the report.
Yeah, certainly. I provided legal advice to all of council. There's no real action on this item, so I got nothing else.
Okay. Any comments from council? Councilman Yerger.
So I'm interested in understanding the legal advice that was given beyond that was given at the prior meeting. When Councilman Ellis, I think, was the one that raised the question about can we get some greater clarity on this? And I thought the answer was, yeah, I'll have to look into it. So did you send something out to us prior to this meeting? Because if so, I didn't read my email at the last minute to pick that up, and it's not being put in the public record.
I would not recommend putting it in the public record unless the council waives attorney-client privilege, but yes, I did send out a memo.
Well, I'd like to hear the definition of emergency disaster as it applies in the situation that we were discussing at the last meeting when we said, how does this meet the standard of emergency disaster? When we were talking about what would have been in code related to utility services and the like. And we were talking about having to go out and get inspectors. And how did that meet the same criteria standard for an emergency? And that's what I thought was that I'll have to look into that. And so that would have been on the public record if you had an answer. I'm interested in having that on the public record from my perspective. I don't know what's wrong with having it in the public record. We have no definition of what is an emergency that I could find in city code.
As I communicated with the council, check 73-502 paragraph 3 under the public letting statutes.
73-502. When did this email or communication come to council?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking, when did I receive this email explaining what item 19 on tonight's agenda was asking you to do orally tonight? When did you send something to council in advance of tonight's meeting that we should have read? How much time did we have to read it?
You're asking me when I sent you an email?
Yes.
That is attorney-client privilege. If you want the council to waive it, then they can waive it and we can have this discussion, but we should really move forward with conducting
When you
business.
sent me an email is classified?
Communications between legal counsel and city council.
I'm only
is
asking for the
attorney-client
date and
privilege.
time in which you sent it to me.
If you want any more discussion on this from me, the council is going to need to waive attorney-client privilege. Thank you.
Okay, see any comments from the public?
Susan Jacobus, 1805 North D Street here in Fremont. We have an issue with legal counsel. If your counsel is telling you, he can't even tell you when you would have received an email, there's an issue, unless you take a collective vote. This is one of the issues of concern. You should have legal counsel in-house and have somebody reliable you can count on. So if you're going to shell out between $500,000 and $700,000 annually than have an attorney in the house. You were shelling that out prior to the tune of $350,000 with in-house counsel, 5 days a week, plus meetings. And then you added on another 200,000 roughly and less for outside legal help. And now this is the response that you get. You couldn't get an answer on what it was at the last meeting, and now you're being told. You can't even be told when you should have received an email. Was it at 4 o'clock? Was it at 5 o'clock? Was it 10 to 6? Was it right when you were in your car and sent a text from your phone? It is difficult to get an answer to something that's simple, and there's nothing legal about it. It's an interesting commentary by the legal. You are the governing body. There's something wrong with this whole scenario.
Any other comments from the public? Councilman Yerger?
Since we can't, I don't know what to do with this. My expectation was that we would get an explanation of this tonight. That was what was offered at the last meeting. I'll have to take this under advisement. And now we can't get that advisement. I guess to me, it's no different than if you're interpreting the verbiage of section 2506. And we're saying, gee, can you give us a clarification of what that statute or municipal code actually says? And the answer is, I can't do that in public. Or 250701, the performance of the city administrator to perform those functions, and those limits and declaration of emergency isn't even in that code. And that's what we were talking about at the last meeting. And we can't have a discussion with legal counsel about what our municipal code does or doesn't say. I want to say, there have been plenty of opportunities that we've had in the past when legal counsel has directly opined, especially, I'm going to say, and to me, with regards to what Fremont Municipal Code does or doesn't say, on the record with no problem. And now tonight on this matter, we can't discuss it in public as to what the definition of emergency disaster is. I don't understand it. I guess from now on, we would say that legal counsel cannot give us any interpretations of Fremont Municipal Code on the record. That's what you're telling me, because that's what I'm asking for. When 2506 says limits may be waived by the city administrator or the mayor if an emergency is declared. What is an emergency? If we can't define that and have that discussion on the record, then I guess I can't ask, and no one else on council should ever ask you to interpret municipal code.
What I am simply telling you is there's no business being conducted right now. There's no need for legal opinion. I've provided counsel, and I communicate with every member of council whenever council is willing to communicate with me. My duty is to protect the privilege of attorney-client privilege with the council and myself. I don't have a duty to give legal advice to the entire city of Fremont.
Any other comments from council on this item?
I'm a little confused. I'm reading this over several times, and it says legal clarification, interpretation of Nebraska state statutes and the city's municipal code regarding the definition. So what are we going to vote on?
There's no action on this item, Councilman Gibson.
Okay.
If there's no other, Councilman Gibson?
I move to go in executive session for the purpose of discussing pending or threatening litigation, contract negotiations, and strategy session, and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Councilman Jensen? A motion has been made and seconded to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending or threatened litigation, contract negotiations, and a strategy session for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Is there any discussion? The pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending or threatened litigation, contract negotiations, and a strategy session for the reason, and the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Cast your vote.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
A motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending or threatened litigation, contract negotiations, and a strategy session, and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to pending or threatened litigation, contract negotiations, and strategy session. No official actions or votes will be taken during the executive session. We'll have counsel, myself, legal counsel, administration, and the council. And Laura and Jody and Brian. Thank you.
That's what he said.